My name is Parker Stewart, and I'm studying Aerospace Engineering. My project is on redescribing Buddhism using a nonlinear, interactive digital representation. I've been working with Dr. Stephen Ramey, who's the chair of the Department of Religious Studies. From an academic perspective, Buddhism is complicated. There are differences in geographic area, who defines the branches as branches, and whether you define Buddhism as a branch of Hinduism. Additionally, there are difficulties in accessibility. Most sources will give you a clear, concise definition of Buddhism that does not do service to the religion. That's where we come in. We aim to show the difference in those geographic areas, cultural influences, and branches. Additionally, we want to dispute, quote, the authority of the origin point. This is why all our timelines are in reverse chronological order. We're doing this so that the layman can understand the difficulties and the different complexities of the religion. So this is where I come in. When I began on this project, it was on paper in a choose-your-own-adventure style, but we wanted a digital version that could be easily visualized, similar to the book Arcadia by Ian Pearce, shown here. We had a few different options for doing this: scalar, HTML image maps, and SVGs, or scalable vector graphics. Scalar is a program created by the University of Southern California, which allows for the easy creation of books and interconnected research papers. HTML image maps allow for the creation of images which have clickable areas that can send you to other links. And SVGs allow for the creation of lines and shapes, in our case, to create a timeline. Some of the advantages of Scalar are that it is easily made and it has some element relations. You could make a timeline with it. But it does not have the universal relations that we're looking for, and it's not visually appealing. The advantages of image maps are that in the short term, it's very timely, and it's quite visually appealing. But the disadvantages are that you have to actually make the image. So you make a new image each time you want to make an edit, so it's not expandable. The advantages of SVG are that it is scalable. But the disadvantages are that in the short term, it's not timely, and it's not very visually appealing. So for the final decision, we decided Scalar, then HTML image maps, and a combination of the two. For our first iteration, we did Scalar alone. On the left, you can see every single part of every single branch, sub-branch, reverse chronological order, and geographic area. And on the right, we have zoomed in China, Japan, and Tibet. The advantages, it has what I'd consider the bare minimum. On the top left, you can see an individual information page on Sinhalese Theravada Buddhism, and it has enough connections to get by. I've pointed out with an arrow where you can click to continue on to European colonialism. The drawbacks, however, are in the visualization. I pointed out with the arrows the event European colonialism, and it occurs 3 times, whereas what we want is one occurrence with 3 branches coming in. Additionally, it's just generally not visually appealing. You can see the blurriness and the general blob of words in it. Which brings us to our second iteration. As you can see, it has all the connections, which I've pointed out in the arrows, European colonialism. All 6 geographic areas converge there, and it's quite easy to see. The disadvantages are that it has opposing connections. I pointed out in the event Tantra spreads. On the left, you have India, and on the right, you have Japan. And they converge from different sides, so it can be difficult to trace them back. Additionally, it's monochromatic. So if you get lost on one line, it can be very difficult to trace back because all the lines are green. There's no starting point. Mind you, not saying that Buddhism has a specific starting point, but a starting point for the project to define the purpose. Lastly, there's no actual information in this. It is just a picture. Which brings us to our third iteration. There are some immediate standouts, and let's look more into them. First off, it has all the connections on one side, so you can follow them back without having to look at those opposing connections. Next, it has different colors. Based upon the colors of the rainbow, you have different colors for geographic areas. It has a starting point at the bottom, what is Buddhism, which I've labeled with an arrow, so that you can see what this project is about and how we're trying to describe Buddhism non-linearly. And lastly, it connects to the scalar that we made earlier, so it has actual information pages with it, instead of just being a picture. The drawbacks, however, is that it still does not have the branches because it's just too wide. Additionally, speaking of wideness, it's wider than the website that I tried to run it on, so it made visualization very difficult. Which brings us to our fourth iteration. as you can see, there's not much difference. The only difference in the visualization is with the size. It now fits on the website. Additionally, there are some differences within scalar. On the left, exemplified by the branches approach, you can see force-directed visualization. And on the right, exemplified by the chronological approach, you can see grid visualization. Looking at the force-directed visualization, the way it works is every element that contains other elements is blue, and every element that does not contain other elements is orange. It's a terrible color scheme, I know. On the right, the grid visualization, it's the same color scheme, but it's shaded, the blue ones are, and the darker that they are, the more elements that are contained within them. The darkest one is the chronological approach with 26. The advantages are very similar to the third, with the addition of the fact that it now fits on the website and the scalar visualization within it. The drawbacks, it's acceptable for the current time. Unfortunately, there are some things that are just not possible due to the way that we tried to run it, such as branches. Again, it's not possible due to the size of the website and because of the fact that HTML image maps are not very scalable, at least the way we're running them. Which brings us to what is next for the future. We want to make it highlighted so that the branches will highlight when you hover over them so you can see which geographic area they're referring to. And bigger and better, we want to make it a scalable database using a program such as SQL. So this way you can have different tags for different elements based upon geographic area, branch, and sub-branch, and also chronologically. Additionally, you could add in different religions that might fit in with this. So you could see how Buddhism has interacted with Hinduism, Jainism, Islam, or Sikhism. What are your questions?
Hi. Have you talked with any Buddhist leaders about your research and the information presented from it?
We consulted scholarly sources for our information because humans have a tendency to distort the image that they want to send based upon what we think they're asking. Whereas scholarly sources, we know a little bit more about the distortion that will happen, and so we chose the enemy that we know as opposed to the one that we don't.
Hello. Who is this intended for? Who would be the end user of this project?
Yes, so I mentioned a little bit that it's intended for layman use, but it can also be used for academic purposes, so really anybody. To the academic, it's meant to call into question how they present different ideas that have differing views on them. And to the layman, it's to bring knowledge of the fact that there are differences in how different people interact with such things as a religion.
So if someone asks you, isn't there a pure form of Buddhism, how would you respond?
That would depend upon who you ask. So we did not say that there was a specific pure form of Buddhism, but that all have been impacted by their cultures. Additionally, if you did say that there was one, it would bring you into conflict with many other branches who would say that they are the most pure form.